morning. First of all, I would like to apologize to everyone for my difficult expressing myself in English. So I have produced a test that I will read in this presentation. My name is Livino Neto. I am PhD student in Communication Science at the Instituto Universitário de Lisboa. I've been researching the right-wing populist discourse since I was developing a dissertation to get my master's degree. In these presentations, I will talk about part of this research. I've studied Jair Bolsonaro's discourse strategy on Twitter from the analysis of publications made during the 2018 Brazilian presidential election. In my research, I considered only the test publications by Bolsonaro's official Twitter accounts. Tweets, videos, images, and other forms of expression typical on this online social network were not included. In order to investigate about this discursive strategy, I have chosen the critical discourses analysis. In this sense, I've mobilized some assumptions. Based on Pichot, I considered the notions of conditions of production, ideological formation, and discursive formation to analyze discourse beyond purely linguistic aspects, taking into account the historical, social, and ideological elements. From the proposal of the dialogical discourse analysis by Bakhtin-Seiko, I worked with the premise that the language established an indissoluble relationship with the history and with the subjects. The text begin a signature of the subject, social or collective, that mobilizes the historical, social, and cultural discourse. Based on Elisa Veron's ideas of social discourse, I understand that the discourse analysis should explain the productive social conditions of the discourse. So I developed an analytical framework that considered ideology of Bolsonaro as a political collective subject, Brazil recent stories, and the social conditions that marked the 2018 presidential election. Also, I mobilized an ideational approach to populism, an ideology of low intensity connected to the other ideologies, and which has a discourse marked by distinction, moral, and flexibility between people, good, and elite, enemies, bad. Currently, I've been working with the concept of Casmud on the radical populist right wing, characterized by the nationalist nativism, authoritarianism, and populism, which separates society into homogeneous and antagonistic groups. Thus, keep this point in mind, I present its following considerations. First, the radical populist right wing relates to the economic structure, support the current model of capitalist production and exploitation. Second, I consider the hypothesis is that right-wing populism is not an antithesis of the political economic system, that populism is a substratum of the system and acts on the reorganizations of the dominant bloc in context of the interregnum. In descriptions of my research. In the view of these characterizations of the subject of Bolsonaro, I analyzed the publications of Bolsonaro's Twitter in two stages. First, I did an extensive content analysis with the corpus of analysis formed by the publications made by Bolsonaro's account on Twitter during the first and second round of his electoral campaign. Then I did an intensive discourse analysis in the scope of 22 publications, selected in the view of the respective engagement rates. In the content analysis, I first did an exploratory approach. I categorized the publications into economic and state management issues and moral and social conflict themes. These categories were based on the insurgent campaign and clarification campaign proposed by Virgi. Then I coded the publications into specific subcategories. Firstly, in economic and state management issues, the publications were classified in, for example, education, foreign policy, economic development, security, etc. Secondly, on the moral and social conflict themes, the publications were classified in specific themes such as left and cultural war, fear and violence, anti-establishment, fake news and media criticism, corruption, etc. In the critical analysis of the discourse, I consider the social, historical, conjectural, and ideological aspects. The analysis is contemplated the language used and subject in the construction of meaning. In results, in the research, I can see is it can be seen in the graphic. In the first round of elections here, 27% of the publications analyzed were classified as economic and state management issues, have as their predominant subcategories foreign policy, economic development, and education. In contrast, 73% of publications analyzed were classified as moral and social conflict issues, with the subcategories no politics, and establishment, fake news and criticism of media, knife attack, and left-wing and cultural war main topics. In the second round, 30% of the publication analysis were classified as economic and state management issues, have as main subcategories economic development, multiple issues, security, governability, and combat corruption, education. 70% of publication were classified as moral and social conflict themes, and the predominant subcategories were fake news and criticism of media, corruption, left and cultural war, new politics, and establishment. In the discourse analysis, it was possible to observe that most part of the publication and in the establishment of conflicts, including the publications classified as economic and state management issues, and that there is a discursive performance typical of the populist narrative, with the separations of the society into two homogeneous and antagonistic groups. The economic agenda, although structuring the political program, does not present the same preeminence in the discursive performance, and the moral themes, although sometimes not explicit, there are reviled within the discourse, reinforcing the discursive strategy which seeks for permanent conflict. Okay, and in order to elaborate better interpretations of the discourse strategy adopted in the Bolsonaro's Twitter publications, the results obtained in the critical discourse analysis were discussed in the light of the concepts of interregnum and the dispute of hegemony by Gramsci, and the public sphere by Habermas. In this study, we understand the Brazilian elections of 2018 as part of social-political context of recompositions of the power blocks in Brazilian society as an interregnum. In the interregnum, the dispute of hegemony with the civil society intensifies, displacing consensus as the main foundation in an attempt to materialize a policy that supports the old ideology. The radical populist right wing is active in Brazil, is seeking to extend its social influence through the dispute over cultural values that declared a supposed cultural war against the Gramscian left wing that intends to defeat capitalism by destroying the culture and values of the Western Jewish Christian society. Bolsonaro's discourse is based on this idea of cultural war, with the dispute for hegemony in civil society as a strategic north, leading it by confronting the most aggressive aspects of dominant ideologies. But in what way would this cultural war act and exercise influence with the civil society? Based on arguments in which the public sphere would be a space where free debate is built, based on an argumentative reason, I propose that political field of Bolsonaro use this online social network as a way to establish itself as a pole of support for the old ideology based on influencing the public sphere. I consider the hypothesis that this online social network plays a role as a kind of imagined public-private sphere, not guided by the argumentative reason, but in the emotion and the rejection of what is different to private interests. This emerging public-private sphere seeks to occupy, influence, and privatize the large public sphere through the discursive strategy of permanent conflict in a supposed cultural war. For conclusion, through this research, it was possible to identify four remarkable aspects in Bolsonaro's discursive strategy on this online social network. First, the discourse is marked by the search for permanent conflict. This conflict can be observed mainly in the antagonism against the left wing, in the criticism of traditional media, and the idea of persecution of the political establishment against the candidate. Secondly, in this discursive performance on Twitter, Secondly, the discursive performance on Twitter publications converge with the discourse characteristic of the right-wing populism, building an idea of homogeneous people, distinctly moral, who have in Bolsonaro the libertary leadership, in antagonism to a supposed elite also homogeneous. Thirdly, Bolsonaro discourse seeks an abstract unit of people, carries with it an aggressive posture and implies expressions of violence with an appeal to the arbitrary and surreal world, distancing itself the characteristics of a recent Brazilian political discourse. Finally, the permanent conflict is part of concept of a cultural war, acclaimed by the radical right wing, which, in a context of interregnum, tries to impose itself as the leading sector of the dominant bloc of the civil society, replacing the search for consensus with confrontations. Twitter is mobilized as a kind of emergence public-private sphere, based on the emotional rejection of what is different and trying to impose itself in the large public sphere, deteriorating the public debate and privatizing it. Okay, thank you everyone for your attention. Of course, some aspects addressed in this research were not detailed in this presentation. For those who are interested in deep in the discussions, I can provide my contacts as well as the complete research. Thank you again. It's my best bibliography. Well, it's the end. Thank you.